Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. The panel members today, seated to my left, is Mr. Brent McIntyre. Attending via Zoom is Ms. Valerie Warhoon, and my name is Ian Mann. I will be the chair today. From the assessment department, personnel, Mr. Darren Ducharme, and the administrative personnel today in the city is Mr. Stephen Lund. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along with the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing is concluded, you may leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all the parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's orders. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today, and the session will close after all the applications have been heard. The board will then deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 through 5 on our docket today. Mr. Lund, will you please affirm the assessor and the first applicant's testimony?
Mr. Assessor, will please stand. Please state your full name.
Darren Ducharme.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. And Mr. Applicant, if you please stand. You affirm that the evidence, please state your full name.
Karamjit Singh.
You affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Turn to the first matter on the list, that with the street address of 695 Sargent Avenue. The issue is one of the amount of assessed value, but I understand there is a preliminary issue with respect to this matter, that being a question of non-cooperation pursuant to the Municipal Assessment Act. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Perhaps we will deal with that matter first, Mr. Singh. There is an application, there's an issue with respect to the cooperation under the Municipal Assessment Act, responding to a letter. We'll hear evidence on that matter first, and then we'll take a brief recess while the board will deliberate what the appropriate remedy is. Okay. So, Mr. Ducharme, would you lead us through your evidence on the non-cooperation application?
To start with non-cooperation.
Please, perhaps read in the roll number, and then we'll move straight to the read the roll number, street address, and then we'll proceed to the non-cooperation.
Okay. The roll number is 130-401-00000. The address is 695 Sargent. I'd just like to mention that there is sort of a history of non-compliance. We have not received a return mailer since 2013. My evidence starts on page 9 of my brief. I could be unity. Get there on page 9. So on page 9, we this is the initial cover letter. It has a tracking number from Canada Post, LP 661-174-117CA. It's dated June 9th, 2023. And we see it's been assigned to Karamjit Singh at 39 Doubleday Drive in Winnipeg. On page 10 of my brief, we have another tracking number, a different tracking number. So this one's assigned to a second owner. We send out the same forms for the 2 different owners, even if they live at the same address, which is the instance here. So we have a tracking number LP 661-174-103CA. And this has been assigned to Rupinder Kurmi, also at 39 Doubleday in Winnipeg. On page 11, these are the instructions for completing the questionnaires that we send out. And page 12 is page 2 of the instructions, giving or outlining the legislative authority, outlining potential consequences of non-cooperation. On page 13, this would be the page 1 of the property income and expense questionnaire that is sent out. You see the address at 695 Sargent Avenue. And on page 14 of our brief, this is the page 2 of the income and expense questionnaire that was sent out to both owners. On page 15, we have the tenant verification form. Again, the property address at 695 Sargent Avenue. And on page 16, this is page 2 of the tenant verification form. On page 17, this is a Canada Post signature card. Someone signing off that they received the documents. In this particular one, we have item or the tracking number LP 661-174-117CA. This was assigned to Karamjit Singh. A little further down, we have a delivery date, June 12, 2023. See a signatory name, KS. I'm assuming that's the owner, Karamjit Singh. And there's a signature provided. On page 18, it's the delivery confirmation from Canada Post, essentially a timeline of these documents. Starting June 9th, 6:56 p.m., the item was processed for delivery, ending June 12th, 1:50 p.m., when the signature was accepted or available. Page 19, the other signature card of the second owner, Rupinder Kurmi. The tracking number LP 661-174-103CA. A delivery date June 12, 2023. The signatory name, initials KS, and again a signature provided. And page 20, the delivery confirmation, again from Canada Post, same tracking number LP 661-174-103CA. Again, starting June 9th, 6:56 p.m., the item was processed for delivery, and June 12th at 1:50, the signature was received. And on page 21, I just included this to show, according to our records, that the owner is still at this address, 39 Doubleday Drive. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
For non-compliance.
Mr. Singh, what we're dealing with now is the issue of non-compliance. Do you have any questions of Mr. Ducharme with respect to his evidence on the issue of non-compliance, not complying with the requirements to send back the mailing?
Yeah, I understand, but I cannot understand the English. I got the mail. I asked my family to help me out to fill that out, but there was nobody to help me to fill that. So I was helpless.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Warren, do you have any questions of the assessor?
Not at this time, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
Just one to confirm, the last one received was May 2013.
Yes, 2013.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
My only question is with respect to the package that is sent. Each letter is identical, just with a different addressee. And they both include the legislative authority required, that's found at page 12 of your brief.
Yes, that'd be correct. I just included one screenshot here, but it would go to both folders, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have anything further. Mr. Singh, it's you've already indicated some evidence with respect to what took place. Is there anything that you would like to add with respect to just the non-compliance issue?
Like, you mean I didn't apply for those letters?
No, if you have any evidence to tell us why there was no non-compliance, or if there was compliance, what may have happened to it. If you have any evidence with respect to that, now is the time to give it, and then we will have an opportunity to ask you
Evidence.
questions about it.
Evidence for what?
Evidence, this is just with respect to the issue of the non-compliance, the not mailing back the mailer that you have to fill out.
I think I mailed that recently with the income, with the help of my accountant. But I was keep requesting the family, I couldn't help, so I couldn't reply back. That is the main reason.
Okay,
If I understand good how to fill that out, I will do it maybe myself. But I couldn't do it.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ducharme. Have you any questions?
You know,
Mr. McIntyre, questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Wareham, any questions?
None, thank you.
And I don't have any questions. So what I'm going to do, we're going to take a short recess. We're going to ask everybody to leave the room. The panel's going to determine the appropriate remedy, if any, and we will let you know, and then continue on with your hearing with respect to the assessed value. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. The board has heard the evidence and deliberated, discussed the matter, and we are going to grant the application as brought by the assessor, Mr. Ducharme, and the burden of proof under section 53 sub 3 of the Municipal Assessment Act will shift to you, Mr. Singh. What that means is that the burden of proof on the balance of probabilities is to make your submission to the board and satisfy us that the assessed value should be changed. Usually that burden of proof is on the assessor, but under these circumstances, it's going to be on you. And so I'm going to ask you to make your presentation to the board first, after which we will have questions of you. Can you please give us your submission or your evidence as to why the assessed value should be altered? Why should be revised?
Sure.
Thank you.
Last year, I called commercial appraisal person to come and appraise so I can put the building for sale. And he came and he said, my building is not worth more than $500,000, including the 2 empty lot at the back. I asked him why. He said, because the rent is very low, very low. Then I asked a different company to let me know. They also said same story. Then I talked with the real estate guy. He said, this is not the right time to sell. Look at the building for sale on Sargent and Ellis. They are taking long time. But I want to sell that building because 2 years ago I had a stroke. So, but I couldn't do that because the way my building is made and suggestion from the real estate guy and appraised according to their think the building is not that much, so I didn't sell that. I didn't put for sale. And now recently, 2 months, my unit is empty. Nobody wants to rent that space. It's already 2 times broken in. I fixed the building. They break it again last Friday. More damage again. and nobody's renting that. If there is somebody renting that space, might not happen again. You know. That's the one unit is empty, is giving me a hard time. How I'm gonna make a mortgage payment and tax payment to,
Thank you. Is that your evidence with respect to the value?
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, we will get a chance to, Mr. Ducharme will ask some questions and the panel member may have some questions as well. So, Mr. Ducharme, have you any questions?
Yeah, I think I have one. You had mentioned an appraisal. Do you have that available?
No, I didn't do the appraisal because I have to pay him $2,500, right? And value was not coming that much, right? So I says, no, forget about it, because I have to prove that to the real estate guy, we should put the building for sale that much.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Wareham, have you any questions?
Sorry, just to confirm, you said that last year you had the appraisal, but now you're saying you don't have the appraisal.
No, I'm sorry, maybe my words are like that. I called the guy to do the appraise. He came, look at the building, and then he called me. Your building is not worth so much because rent tenants are paying is very low according to the unit. He said, increase the rent. Maybe then we can increase the value of the building. But I didn't pay to get the paper.
Okay, so he just gave you a verbal.
Verbal, because if I want the paper, he wants 2,500 plus GST, whatever is the rule is, you know. But I didn't pay him.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre,
Just one question. What portion of the building is vacant?
697.
So there's multiple civic addresses on this site?
695 is divided in 3 units. 693, 695, and 697.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
okay, just following up on that question, Mr. Singh. The 3 units, there's a jewelry store or a jeweler in
Yeah.
one of the units
Yeah,
and a convenience store in one of the units?
no, middle unit, they sell their country gift item.
Okay. And what was in the 3rd unit?
Music's recording studio. People used to record the music.
Okay, and which one is vacant? The recording studio?
Recording studio.
Recording studio, okay.
Yeah.
And the rents that you charge, do you have copies of the leases with you?
No.
Okay,
They are sitting there from such a long time.
sorry,
They were sitting there from a long time.
okay,
So when I purchased the building, previous landlord said they're a good tenant. They were sitting there until recently. The music studio is empty.
okay. So they've been long-term, they've been tenants there a long time?
Long time, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. We'll now hear from the assessor and you'll have a chance to ask him questions, okay?
I don't know what to ask, but
Well, we'll wait to hear what he says first and then you can ask your questions. Mr. Ducharme, please, if you could lead us through your report, okay?
Thank you. File number 24-242. Roll number 130-401-1. 00000. Address 695 Sergeant. For the roll year 2025 with a reference date April 1st, 2023, we have an assessed value of 801,060 T. In the property description, we have a parcel use, CMRST. There's one building, 3 premises, it's 1 story. It was built in 1922, we have an effective year of 1974. We got a land area of 7,815 square feet and a leasable area of 5,684 square feet. Our recommendation is to confirm the 2025 value. On page 2, we have the top photo is an overhead photo facing the front of the subject building. So subject includes 693, 695, and 697 on the photo. On Sargent, located between Victor and Toronto. The bottom page is an overhead view facing the back of the subject building. Essentially, it takes up the, you can see it takes up the entire lot space. On page 3 is a Google Street View facing the front of the subject. I do believe I missed the recording studio on that one, so I apologize. The bottom photo is a street view facing the back of the subject property. The subject property is located within Region 5, West End Moseley, in NCA 108 Daniel McIntyre. Page 4, I have my rent comparables. Comparable 1 on 80 Sherbrooke Street. This comparable is located in the same region, 5, as a subject. The comparable is of the same parcel use, CMRST as a subject. The leased area is comparable at 2,480 square foot, which is similar to 2 of the subject premises. This comparable is in a building with 4 other tenants on the main floor. And in addition to street parking, this comparable does have parking for approximately 20 vehicles to the side and back of the building. Comparables 2 and 3, 912 Portage, units 103 and 107. These comparables are chosen because they are in the same region 5 as a subject, as well as the leased areas being similar. However, these comparables are located in a better location, Portage Avenue, with better parking, about 20 stalls. So I've included here, but I will not be including these 2 comparables when I sum an average and median for these comparables. Comparable 4, 849 Notre Dame. This comparable is located in an adjacent neighborhood to the subject. It's located 2 blocks north of the subject. It's similar in leased area to one of the subject premises, and it's located in a building with only 2 other tenants similar to the subject. This comparable has no parking in front other than the street, which is similar to the subject, though it does have 8 stalls in the back. Comparables 5 and 6, 596 and 598 Ellis. These 2 comparables are located in the same region, 5 as a subject. These comparables are located in close proximity to the subject, about block south and 4 blocks east of the subject. This comparable is located in a small strip mall with a total of 5 tenants and does have parking in front for about 10 vehicles. To sum the average rent of the above comparables, not including the 912 Portage Avenue comparables, is an average of $13.69. The median is $13.65. I feel this supports our model rent at $12.30 per square foot blended rate, which you'll see on the next page. Page 5, the subject property, market income report. Premise ID 22207 is 2,020 square feet. We have a rent at $12.30 per square feet, giving a potential rent of $24,846. Premise ID 22208 is 1,000 square feet. It's we have a rent at $13.16 per square foot, giving a potential rent of $13,160. And premise ID 22209 at 2,664 square feet, with a rent at $11.98 per square foot, gives a potential rent of $31,915. So we have a total leased area of 5,684 square feet. Giving a potential rent of $69,921, which is a blended rate of $12.30 per square foot. We've applied a vacancy loss of 5%. Expenses are 3%. Shortfall at $7 per square foot. Giving a net operating income of $62,443. We've applied an overall cap rate of 7.80%. Giving an estimated value of $801,000 rounded. On page 6. The income value summary, so this was just discussed on the previous page, I won't repeat it. On page 7, we have our capitalization rate chart. The models apply a cap rate of 7.80. You'll know for retail that the 7.8% applied rate is greater than the 80th percentile for all cap rate reports, which we feel fairly reflects the subject property and the area that it's located in. Our capitalization rates are further supported by comparison with real estate markets from Colliers, CBRE National, and Cushman Wakefield. Page 8, the municipal assessment acts excerpts. And then the remainder of my brief had to do with the non-cooperation evidence. So that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Singh, you now have an opportunity to ask questions of the assessor with respect to his testimony. Do you have any questions of the assessor?
I don't know what should I ask.
Well.
To be honest with you,
Okay.
no idea.
Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
I just have one question. When was it last inspected?
So it was last inspected 2018. Well, we attempted, but the door was locked. We emailed the request in 2019, but received no response.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Warehood, any questions?
Just one for clarification. The vacant one at 697, the recording studio, out of your potential rents, or which one was that? Like what?
That was
Is
the
it-
biggest, like you mean, how much the rent I was getting?
No, I'm asking the assessor. And
The recording studio, okay, sorry, what was the question?
yeah, like I'm just trying to place this, the 697 was vacant, the gentleman said the recording studio, so in your potential rent here, which one was that? What?
It was 2000, it was the last one, the last premise, PID 22209. It's 2664 square feet at 1198, and our records indicate the recording studio is still there, so. We weren't aware that they had vacated.
Okay. Okay, that's it, my questions for now, thank you.
My questions relate to parking. Looking at the photos on your page 2, and then the Google Street, it appears to me there's parking at the rear of this building. Is that part of the property as well, or is that something different? And I know going back, the outdoor parking spot says 0 in the heading.
These are separate, they're all numbers.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further. Mr. Singh, do you have any summary to leave with the board before we conclude your matter? So, okay, thank you. Mr. Ducharme, any summary?
I have no summary.
Thank you. Then we will conclude this matter, and Mr. Singh, you will receive a copy of our decision by registered mail.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving on to the next matter as 467 Sergeant. Is there an applicant present for this, or is there any communication with Tom?
Applicant present, we've had no communication.
Then perhaps we'll stand that matter down until the end of the list and deal with it then. If we can move on, please, to 753 Sulphur, applicant number 3 on the list. You could affirm the evidence of the applicant who's coming forward, please.
You'll just remain standing. I will look for him into the hearing. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Salmakowski.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Mr. Ducharme, as we've already established, 753 Selkirk Avenue, if you could begin your presentation, please.
Thank you. File number 24-317. We have roll number 140-106-78000. The address is 753 Selkirk Avenue. For the roll year 2025, we have a reference date April 1st, 2023, with an assessed value of $424,000, 60 T. In the property description, we have a parcel use of CMRST. We have 2 buildings, 3 premises. It's 1 story. Actual years built 1932, 1977, with effective years built 1960 to 1977. We have a land area of 9,029 square feet, a leasable area 5,993 square feet. Recommendation, I'd like to recommend a decrease in value from 424,000 to 342,000 by decreasing the rent on the 3 premises and increasing the cap.
And what would you be decreasing the rent?
So I guess if we go to page 5 of my brief. On PID 22611. I'd be decreasing that rent from $7.40 to $6.92. PID 22613. I'd be decreasing the rent from $6.25 to $5.84. And PID 22614. I decrease the rent from $6.95 to $6.50. And I've changed the cap rate from 8.2 to 9.45. I could go through the potential rents and such if you wish.
I think we can do the math with respect to that. We'll continue on. I'm not sure if there's this has been discussed, but if you could just continue on to finish the rest of your presentation, and then we'll hear from Mr. Salmakowski.
Okay. So we have an overhead view facing the front of the subject at 753 to 757 Selkirk Avenue. And the bottom photo is an overhead view facing the back of the subject at 753 to 757 Selkirk. Page 3 is a Google Street view. And yes, I missed unit 7 at the unit at 757 Selkirk Avenue here. I only have 2 of the premises here. The bottom is a Google Street view facing the back of the subject. The subject property is located in Region 3, North End, Logan Weston, in NCA 302 William White neighborhood. Page 4, I have my rent comparables. First, I couldn't find any evidence for commercial C6 properties being used as storage, which this subject property is used for, according to the owner, and for which we do have it classified as. The above comparables are classified as C2, your standard commercial buildings that would be open to the public. So I think for evidence, I think we need to look at the actuals submitted by the owner. I don't feel there's any need to go into detail in regards to the above properties, other than to say all the comparables are located in the same region. 3 North End, Logan, and that 1070, 1080 Main are located in the same neighborhood, 302 William White as the subject. So I'll just continue on the subject. I'll go through my evaluation when we get to the subject's mailer. Page 5, the subject property is the market income report. So I've just kind of gone through that previously. Would you be fine with me just skipping?
That's fine. I think we have your evidence with respect to that. You can continue on.
Yeah. And page 6, again, is just a summary of the previous page, so I'll continue on. Page 7 of my report is the capitalization rates. We've applied a revised cap rate of 9.45% to the subject, which you'll note from the chart below is well beyond the 80th percentile for retail. For all reports, including Colliers, CBRE, and Cushman Wakefield, we feel this is more than fair rate and that it does take into account the location of the subject property. Page 8, the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Page 9 is the subject income and expense questionnaire. We see that the owner has checked partially owner operated. And that he's reported income of $21,480 for 2 of the premises, with a leased area smaller than the has reported income of $21,480 for 2 of the premises. This $21,480 gross is in support of our model rents for these 2 premises. If you go back to page 5 of my report, if we had the rents for PID 22611 at 10,000, so this is the revised potential rent. The revised potential rent is $10,726. And PID 22614 at it's the revised value is now $7,163. We get a total potential rent of $17,889. Now that's net, but I feel that's in support of the revised value that I presented. Page 10 is page 2 of the income and expense questionnaire. Page 11 is the tenant verification form. So we see monthly rents for unit 1, Barbara Burtnick, at $500 per month, and premium alarm at $1,290 per month rent. Gross, so gross rent. And page 2 is a copy of the tenant verification form. So that would complete my presentation and be open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Salnikowski, you've heard what Mr. Ducharme has said, and the reduction in the assessed value to the recommendation to reduce it to $342,000 based on his reduction of the rents and increase of the capitalization rate. What is your feeling with respect to that? Do you accept that value, or would you like to ask more questions?
No, I don't accept that value.
Okay, then it's time.
This is the first time I've seen this. I've never. I don't know if that's the way this works here. Anyway, I'll just briefly go over this and then I'll go.
Okay, Mr. Salnikowski, this is the time to ask the assessor questions. You'll get an opportunity to make your submission and then ask.
Oh, okay, I asked the assessor's question.
Yes, if you have any questions for the assessor with respect to his valuation and the methods he used to arrive at that valuation, now's the time.
Okay, rent comparables, McPhillips, Main Street, Notre Dame. We're talking about Selkirk Avenue here. These are far removed from Selkirk Avenue. Those are 2 different, totally different environments. Main Street, Notre Dame, come on, McPhillips. You can't compare these to Selkirk Avenue.
I'm not comparing them, so.
Well,
I have it in the brief, but I mentioned, that I'm not comparing them in terms of evaluation.
and the rest of this stuff, I don't understand. I don't know what capitalization rates are. This is all Latin to me. I absolutely no idea what that's all about. As far as the last page here where Barbara Burtnick, that was two tenants ago, Freeman Fire Alarm, they're both gone. That's also 2 tenants ago. I have had 17 tenants in there in the past 14 years, so I'll go into that later. I don't know. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McIntyre, have you any questions?
Just one question. So the revised net operating income is how much?
It will be $32,366.
366. And that takes into account revised rentals and the,
Yeah, revised rentals, vacancy stays the same, expenses the same, shortfall the same.
okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Wareham, questions?
Sorry, none at this time, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Ducharme. You indicated and you went through it in some respect as well, and you use the potential rents or you use the actuals to arrive at potential rents or to, okay, I may have misunderstood you. You use the actuals as provided on the mailer, the income and expense mailer, to determine the rental of some of the units, but there was another unit used for storage. Is that accurately?
So the one unit is owner operated.
Right.
So I have rents here for 2 units. That I provided, and they're just, I'm saying they're in support of our model rents.
Okay.
So I adjusted, like, to get the revised rents, I adjusted basically the quality, like characteristics. These are revised model rents. I just revised, I guess, like certain characteristics of the property to bring it lower.
Okay.
If that makes.
Yes.
That answers your question.
It does. The follow-up I have is with respect to storage, the owner occupied, you indicated was being used for storage.
That's, yes, from indication from the owner, yes.
Okay, and the rent for the storage model was modeled, or where was that derived?
Yeah, it's, the storage, it is this model, it is a model rate for storage. For storage rents.
Okay, and the storage rent is premise ID 22613, 14, or 11? Okay. There's one that's 30.
So. They're all storage apparently. Okay. The ones I revised were PIDs 22611.
Right.
And PID 22614.
Okay.
The PID 22613 is owner operated.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further. Mr. Salikowski, can we hit for evidence, please?
Okay, I own 2 properties on Selkirk Avenue. They're in the same block. They're probably a couple 100 feet apart. One at 800 Selkirk, one at 753 Selkirk. 2 years ago, I was in this room, not this room, the room next door. And it was agreed that the one at 753 Selkirk was appraised at 300,000. The one at 800 Selkirk at 299,000. That's $1,000 difference. They're basically the same, considered the same value. Now I get this surprise in the mail saying that one is worth 423,000 and the other 385,000. From the same value being valued at the same amount to such a big difference in value. I don't get it. In any case. Now, the one at 800 Selkirk, valued at $299.
Mr. Stanikowski, I'm going to stop you there. Just in the introduction area, and I understand that you own both properties, but the board is not in a position to comparison of other assessed properties is not legitimate evidence for the board to consider.
But they are both my properties.
They're both your properties, that is correct, but assessments, we have been instructed by superior courts and by the municipal board as well, that evidence of other assessments are not to be considered by the appellate.
Okay, well, I won't go there then. Now, the comparables here, they don't mean anything. I surveyed the area, the 2 blocks, the block that my properties are in, and the next block. We're talking about a unique part of the city where, no, not unique, part of the city is a rat trap. Anyway, there were 74 properties in there, in those 2 blocks, from Arlington to, is it Mackenzie? Mackenzie. There's 74 properties, commercial, residential, vacant lots, boarded up properties. 30% of the buildings there in those 2 blocks are either vacant land or boarded up, with another 20% slum houses that should be torn down. Anybody driving down Selkirk Avenue can see what you're dealing with. So 50% of the properties in those 2 blocks should be leveled, and it should be redeveloped, that whole area. There were only 2 new builds in those 2 blocks in the past 20 years. I'm sorry, 3. There's one that it's a house that's going up now as we speak, which, by the way, has a smashed window in it already. There were only the 3 properties in the past 20 years that I know of that are new, that have been built in that area. As we're talking, vacant land, drill dumps. It just makes me cry. I was raised in the area. We got married on Selkirk Avenue, and I went to church on Selkirk Avenue, so I know that street very well. We've got hookers on the corner of Parr every day. Fires all the time. Charred. You can see the utility poles in our back lane there. 2 of them that are completely burnt. A guy was murdered and burnt in a vehicle there a couple years ago. 3 doors away, there was a murder last year. Across the street, there was a murder 2 years ago. Windows broken. I've had my window, I just paid, I'm not bullshitting. 2 weeks ago, I just paid $880 for a smashed window. I don't dare put an insurance claim in on anything. The fellow on the corner at Empire Drugs got rid of his place because he couldn't get insurance on his building.
Mr. Stanikowski, I'm sorry to interrupt right now, but we're concerned with the valuation of the amount of the assessed value of 753 South Avenue. I appreciate the description of the neighborhood and the deterioration of the neighborhood in the past few years. If there is some evidence or some empirical or some comparisons that you would like to present us to show us that the values of the properties have decreased, or what other values of properties may be, that would certainly be helpful to the board.
Well, the values have not increased, that's for sure. How can I provide evidence when there's nothing? I don't have access to what was sold there recently or anything like that. Yes, my rents are as is. We're using the one unit ourselves. These tenants are gone that are on here, but the ones that are there now are paying exactly the same thing. There's a fellow that's renting for the one unit, he's paying me $500 a month for storage. Big deal. The second one, we're using ourselves for storage. My son collects junk. My other boy has 3 cars that he's got in there. He's working on cars. Premium alarm, he's gone. One of his employees got assaulted. One of the women got assaulted there, and he said he's gone. He's out of there. Everybody's moving out. 17 tenants in the 14 years that I've had the place. I don't know. What else do you want from me?
At this point, we'll have, if that's the some of your evidence, we'll ask questions. The assessor will have some questions. The panel members will have some questions to help us further flesh out the situation with respect to 753 Selkirk.
Okay, ask question. I'm having a bad day. I'm just so upset because of the situation there. It's just horrible. I called 311. I call them like every 2 weeks to do something, to clean up something. It's just endless. I wish I could get rid of the place, but I can't because my boys are using it.
Thank you. Mr. Dutra, questions?
I do. The other property at 800 Selkirk on the other side of the street at the end of the block. How long has that tenant been there? Our records indicate.
They've been there. That's the only tenant. No, we said we weren't going to talk about that, so.
Well, what I indicated was we're not going to talk about the assessed value of that. There's a difference. The assessed value is the value as set by the city.
But this is coming into play now, okay? 800 Selkirk is coming into play. So
The circumstances of the neighborhood which you raised are, I think, it's a fair question, Mr. Salmakowski.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry. That's a good tenant I have there. Okay, and they've been there for, I believe, 14 years.
Yeah, we have 2009. On
Uh,
that same block,
2009.
735 Selkirk, the convenience store there block, according to our records, has been there since 2012. Does that seem right?
The convenience store. Which one? Sorry?
2735 Selkirk. It's a convenience store at the end of your block.
Oh, yeah, that's convenient, all right. You got cabs pulling up there every 10 minutes. And guys walking out with paper bags with some product in there. I don't know what. I'm not saying what is being sold out of there.
Has it been there since 2012? Does that seem right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I went once and the guy was selling a fellow a sucker, one of the little suckers that you get for bag full for $2 for 50 cents. That's what you're dealing with there.
79 Selkirk on the same block. Our records indicate the tenant's been there since 1984.
So, which story?
795 Selkirk, keep childcare.
Keep childcare. Yeah, they've been there for a long time.
That's all my questions.
Ms. Wareham, do you have any questions?
I'm just wondering, sir, what would you feel is would be a fair assessment on your property if you're not in agreement with the city assessor at 342? What do you feel?
I think it should, quite frankly, it should stay the same or be lower because things are just getting worse there. Honest to God, they're getting worse.
Okay.
I agreed to something on the other building, which I'm not gonna say how much or anything because it's not allowed, but I could live with that, but I honest to God, I don't think that it should go up at all. I mean, since in the past 2 years, another place has burned down. there are two more. Out of the 5 lots between Par and our property. One is that corner store. The house next door is inhabited, sort of. And then the rest are all vacant with nothing but garbage. I'm not kidding you, it's just garbage. I just emailed 311 2 weeks ago and it's still not cleaned up. I do this every 2 weeks. That's all I got. I'm just frustrated.
Mr. McIntyre, oh, sorry, did you have any more questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre,
I have no questions, thank you.
and I have no questions, Mr. Stanikowski. This will conclude this matter. The board will deliberate and send you a registered letter with our decision.
Okay.
Thank you
Yeah,
for your
right.
time. Thank you for coming
Thank
in.
you to the assessor. I know he's got a job and it sucks, but that's the nature of the beast, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Can I stay in the room? Or do I have to?
No,
It's public, you can stay where other people. Okay, that's fine. We'll move on then to the next matter on the docket, 992 Main Street. I believe there is an applicant present on that property.
Can I stand up now? There you go. Okay.
I will bring you into the hearing once you're ready.
Okay.
The applicant, please state your full name.
Astrid Lichty.
You affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may be seated.
I see as well that there is a preliminary matter with respect to this. The issue is the valuation of the assessment, but there was a preliminary matter with respect to the non-compliance. Is that correct?
Yes.
If you can perhaps introduce the property, phone number, the address, and then file number, and then continue. Go straight, please, to the evidence relating to the alleged non-compliance.
Certainly, file number 24-752. We have roll number 141-001-26820. The address is 992 Main Street. So the evidence starts. Page 9 of my brief. The first on page 9, we see the cover letter that was sent. It has tracking number for Canada Post LP 661-171-075 CA. We see it's assigned to Cosmopolitan Florists, Astrid Lichty, 994 Main Street, and we see a date June 9th, 2023. Page 10 is the instructions for completing the questionnaires that was mailed out. Page 11, we have the legislative authority that was mailed out. Page 12 is page 1 of the tenant verification form. We see address 992 Main Street that was sent out. Page 13 is page 2 of that tenant verification form. Page 14 of our brief is page 1 of the income and expense questionnaire. Again, the address 992 Main Street. Page 15 is just page 2 of the income and expense questionnaire. Page 16 is the Canada Post signature card. It's tracking number LP 661-171-075 CA. We have a delivery date, June 12th, 2023. We have a signatory name CF. I believe those would be the initials of the individual who provided a signature. And we have a signature. And on page 17, essentially the timeline of the documents. Starting at June 9th, 6:46 p.m. The item was processed for delivery. And June 12th, 10:03 a.m., the signature was received. And that would conclude my presentation for non-compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lick, have you any questions with respect to the application for, or the allegation of non-compliance? We're not getting into the.
It's not an allegation, it's correct. I
Okay.
was compliant in all the years. During COVID, there was I guess a skip, these information packages.
I'm gonna stop you there. This is the time to ask questions
Oh.
with respect to, you'll get an opportunity, of course, to make
No,
your.
No, I don't have any questions. The allegation is correct.
Um,
I did not fill out the form.
Thank you. Are you contesting the application for
No.
non-compliance?
No, I'm not contesting it. I'm saying it was something that didn't get done, even though all those years I did it, and I know that I need to do it.
Can I just add to that? We haven't had, I'm sorry.
Okay, please, yes.
I meant to mention, we haven't had compliance since 2018 for this property.
Okay, perhaps what we'll do is, we'll continue on with questions and we'll hear what you have to say, and then we'll take a break and determine what we want to do, just so we follow the procedure step by step, so we're not missing anything. Mr. McIntyre, have you any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Wareham, do you have any questions?
None, thank you.
And I have no questions. Perhaps given what you've already said, Ms. Lichty, is there an explanation for not filling it out when you knew that you had to?
Yes,
Then can we hear that?
okay. So during COVID, there was a skip gap in when I guess a delay in when these packages were sent. About when they first came, when I first bought the business from my dad, and someone explained to me it's about a 10-year period, and then they'll go and they'll send these packages to a different business, but they're looking for so many flower shops in this area, so many boutique firms, etc. And I just when the packages during COVID, there was a delay, and it came, and I didn't fill it out. I lost my accountant during that time. There was a lot of other things on my radar to do. I also didn't appeal my taxes, even though that they went up, and now I'm kind of catching up. I was raising an 8-year-old in a store, doing homeschooling in a business, trying to keep a business together with very little and constantly fluctuating staff. The last package I did not sign for. I also have summer students through Urban Green Team that work out of my building, 4 months, 3.5 to 4 months out of every summer, but that's not my signature. And we have a locked door policy, so the mailman knows to knock, and whoever is in the store will open up the door and let them in.
Okay.
But they did follow up with a, why didn't you go in and fill this out? So I'm not pleading innocence here.
Thank you. Mr. Ducharme, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Wareham, any questions?
None, thank you.
And I have no questions. So what we're going to do is take a short
And I
recess.
think-
Thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order, please. Ms. Lichty, we had heard the evidence with respect to the application or the allegation of non-compliance. And as you were aware, under section 16 of the Municipal Assessment Act, you are obligated to comply with such an order, or such a request rather, from the assessor. The burden of proof for non-cooperation under section 53 sub 3 dictates that the burden of proof will be on the applicant. We have accepted the evidence with respect to the non-cooperation or the failure to comply, and so the onus is going to shift to you with respect to the hearing now. It'll be up to you to proceed first and then persuade the board on the balance of probabilities that in fact the valuation should be revised.
Okay,
There's one other issue that we discussed in camera as well. As you are also aware, I believe the exchange of evidence dictates a certain time frame where evidence is to be exchanged. The second part of your evidence, the 11 photographs, I think they're in the basement area, were received late. They were received on July 31st instead of July 29th. We are going to consider that evidence when you explain it to us, but the weight that is attached to it will be up to a determination by
okay,
our panel. Okay,
okay.
thank you. Then I would ask you to proceed, please, with your evidence with respect to the valuation of the premises in 992
Okay, with respect to the basement, until I had a conversation with Mr. Ducharme, I didn't understand that I was being assessed for it. So he clarified that, and that's through our conversation on the phone. He said, please send me some pictures. It has never been a usable area. And I was kind of surprised. It was a very large brief to go through, and I actually had to cross-reference at the City of Winnipeg website to know what some of the language was, even though it is written in plain English. And we did have several phone conversations. Based on the comparables that he gave me, and I looked at the comparables, and my question was, one is in West Kildonan, which is not the north end of Winnipeg, and the other two were mall areas, which isn't a standalone building at all. They're mall areas where the building owner is responsible for the maintenance, the snow clearing, graffiti removal, etc. Exterior work. I've got two very old standalone buildings. That was my question for Mr. Ducharme. He did come back with a 647 in consideration of some of my arguments, but in my calculation, that's really just the reduction of the basement. And it comes to about 24% reduction from the 855, but that's just the basement area, which is almost a 24% of the allowable area of 6,105 for the building, and 1,364 is a basement that's never been used. That in taxation calculation I've been paying for probably 26 years. So I found his I guess his information to come back to me, I still felt was extremely high. I know I can't use comparisons of assessments, but what I can give you is in the vicinity 17 buildings and properties within a 3-block area that are for sale. Some of them have been for sale for over 10 years. Sale or lease, they are simply not selling. I put that in my first part of the submission. 978 Main. 906 Main, 799 Main, 984 Main, 1045, 1045, 1051, 1053, 802, 800, 878, and that's only page one of, oh, here we go. 919, 1200, 799, 814, 881 to 893, 795, 865. I do work for the Business Improvement Zone. I have a part-time job there as an administrator, and currently from our 109 businesses 10 years ago, we are down to 57 businesses. That's a 48% reduction in businesses. We either have vacant commercial properties that do not sell, turnover for a short period of time, either restaurant or convenience go up for sale or lease again, or burnt out properties. 843 Main Street has been burnt out and the rubble is still there after 2 years. I do know the building at Pritchard and Main. I grew up in that building. Since 1968, I grew up in that building. And I understand the comparables, but a mall comparison or West Kildonan is not a comparable on Pritchard and Main. Beyond that, I found Mr. Ducharme very, very helpful and very nice to deal with. I just didn't agree with the number that he came up with. He didn't agree with my number. Maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle. I'm not here to be combative or contentious.
Thank you. If that's your evidence, then we'll proceed to questions, and I'm sure Mr. Ducharme will have some questions for you, or you may have.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, Ms. Boardroom, have you any questions?
Just a couple for clarification, just to let the applicant know that some of the evidence that she's given here is vacant land. Like it would be vacant lots.
Vacant lots.
Some, yes, ma'am. About a third. The buildings burnt out. They were set on fire.
So
Whether
that's
it's
on,
accidentally or intentionally, I don't know.
so the three vacant lots, those were burnt out buildings.
There were 3 together, as a matter of fact, right in a line. So it was the Old Owner Paint and Hardware, which was a roofing outlet, Surplus Direct, which was 843 Main Street, which was the former Kernhill, and the furniture store, Lord Selkirk Furniture, which had been there since 1974. All 3 of those burned down together. Across the street was the 2 buildings for Dominion Veterinary Labs, and I've got several others that are vacant, burnt out. Well, they're leveled lots now. 843 Main Street has still got rubble after 2 years.
I was just looking at the 1045 Main and the 802 Main.
1045 Main would have been Harvey's hair studio. That they leveled, that's been there 9 years and has not sold. The 802 was right beside Dominion Veterinary Labs. That was set on, it was a vacant building. It was arson. That was 3 years ago during the beginning of the second year of COVID, and it is still up for sale. It does not sell.
Okay, and just to reconfirm what you said, that the assessor gave you a figure, I'm sorry, I missed that. What was the figure that you said the assessor?
Mr. Ducharme, his offer was 600, I'm speaking, it's like I'm talking to God, sorry. Mr. Ducharme's, what he gave me was 647 ma'am.
And you feel that is still too high?
I absolutely do, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's disconcerting when it's coming from above.
Mr. McIntyre, questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
And we'll probably get this, or I'm hoping we get this from Mr. Ducharme. The basement area that you were assessed is the smallest of the three areas in his brief. Is that correct?
Yes, 1,034, I think.
Okay, and that's all of the pictures that you submitted on July 31st. That's all of the
Yeah.
basement area of the electric.
I would have never known to look for a
Bathtub.
basement because I wouldn't have figured it would have ever been an assessed area. So when I went through the brief, and that's when I called him to get clarification.
And what valuation do you think is appropriate for this property?
Well, sir, this is something completely new to me, so I'm not a bargainer. I came up with what I felt and I used a portioned assessed value of 300. I don't know how that would come to the actual assessed value, but I looked at the property bills and there's an assessed value and a portion. And I was hoping for something around the portion to be around 300,000, which might make it around 500 or so, I think. But I'm not, don't know your mathematical calculations.
Okay, now, just so that we are clear, and I may have a different determination of portion value or what
Okay.
that means. What do you mean by portion value?
I was hoping to go back to 2018.
Okay.
The 2018 taxes,
And that amount was, according to your brief,
550.
$550,000.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything further.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Oh, no, sorry, there's still.
Okay.
Mr. Ducharme has
Oh.
sent evidence now, and then you will get an opportunity to ask questions. Mr. Ducharme?
Sure, thank you. The file number is 24752. The roll number is 141-001-26820. The address 992 Main Street. For the roll year 2025 with the reference date April 1st, 2023, we have an assessed value 850,060 T. The parcel use is CMRST. We have 2 buildings, 3 premises, 1 story. Actual year built 1940 and 1946, with the effective years built being the same, 1940 and 1946. We have a land area 8,078 square feet, a leasable area of 6,105 square feet. I do have a recommendation effective January 1st, 2026 for a value of 657,000. So assume my reference is 10,000 higher, 657,000. I think maybe she misunderstood me.
It was a telephone conversation. I could have misunderstood.
Thank you.
On page 2, the subject photo, an overhead view facing the front of the subject at 992 and 984 Main Street at the corner of Pritchard Avenue. And the bottom photo is an overhead view facing the back of the subject property and side at 992 and 994 Main. Page 3, we have a Google Street view facing the front of the subject at Main and Pritchard. And the bottom is the Google Street view facing the back of the subject. The subject is located in Region 3, the North End, Logan-West End, and in NCA 302 of the William White neighborhood. Page 4 are my comparables. Comparables 1 and 2, 1560 Main Street. A and B were chosen because they're on the same street as the subject and in an adjacent region to the subject. These comparables are the are the only two tenants in this building, which is similar to the subject, and it's similar in area to the subject. They do have superior parking with room for approximately 10 cars in front of the store, versus about 5 parking units for the subject at the side of their store. Comparables 3 and 4, 995A and 995. Sorry, that second one should be just strictly 995. Are on the same, were chosen as both are located on the same street and within the same region 3 as a subject. And in fact, in an adjacent neighborhood to the subject. These comparables do have superior parking. There's approximately room for 25 cars. And there are 2 tenants located, or 3 tenants in total for this property. Comparable 5, 1074 Main Street. This comparable was chosen. It's on the same street as a subject. It's in the same region as a subject, and in fact, in the same neighborhood as the subject, 302 William White. This comparable is also similar in size to one of the subject premises. And this comparable is superior in terms of parking with about 20 stalls, being a strip mall, and I would say this comparable would be most similar to the subject. To sum, the average rent of these comparables is $12.69 per square foot. The median rent, these comparables, is $12.58 per square foot. It was difficult to find comparables on this street in this region. I did attempt to look at other florist shops, but couldn't find any. In general, the comps are superior in terms of parking in comparison to the subject. And thus I've adjusted my model rents to account for this, and I'll go over that on the next page. On page 5, the subject property market income report. Premise ID 17463. We have a leasable area of $3,377. We have a model rent of 13.47 per square foot. And that's been reduced to $11.79 per square foot. PID 17464. Leasable area is 1,364 square feet. The rent was 14.70 square feet. And we've reduced the rent to $12.86 per square foot. PID 26818. This is the basement. Leasable area 1,364 square feet. And we reduced the rent from $7.78 to $1.47 per square foot. The leasable total area is 6,105 square feet, given a potential rent. So I didn't make the adjustments. I have a net operating income. So the change from 68,036 to 52,564. I kept the same cap rate at 8%, giving $657,000 value rounded. On page 6 is the income value summary that I just finished reviewing. Page 7 is the cap rate report for the subject. We've applied an 8% cap. As you'll note, for retail, it's above the 80th percentile for all reports, which we feel is a fair rate, and does consider the location of the subject property. Page 8, the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. And the remainder of the brief has to do with the evidence for non-cooperation. So that would end my presentation and open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vicky, have you any questions of the assessor?
Questions? No, the only question is that I didn't have the breakdown after the number that we discussed on the phone, so that I only have the original brief.
Okay.
But that's okay. I mean, he explained it very well.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Warehood, any questions?
None, thank you.
And I have no questions. Ms. Vick, do you want to make any summary?
Yes, well, I'd like to thank Mr. Ducharme for being available and being helpful. I still feel that it is way overvalued. And the reduction that we're really talking about ends up being, you know, okay, we can no longer consider the basement. This is where we're getting that 24% from. And I should have never been paying for it all this time, and I did. So one of my questions is, can I recoup that I've overpaid all these years? Probably the answer is no, but that's not germane to the fact that the assessment is overvalued. And yes, it is the area, and yes, it is the crime, and yes, it is the vacant buildings, and I do believe, in all honesty, sir, I'm coming from a place where I've been there for 56 years. I know what I'm talking about. I understand the city needs revenue, but there needs to be a recalculation here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ducharme, summary?
Oh, geez, I did it again. I got
No summary from me.
Thank you. Then, that we'll have heard the evidence, that will conclude this matter, and then you will receive a letter, registered.
Oh, I guess one more question. How do I appeal the decision if I'm dissatisfied?
There will be the instructions
Instructions
included
back.
in the letter, and you know, the municipal board, if you choose to.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. And next matter on list is anything to break,
I'm okay.
oh, right, I'm okay. Then we'll continue on. I think there's one more, with an applicant, and that is at 218 Marion Street. And Mr. One, please admit.
Just connecting the applicant, Mr. Yankiski, can you hear us?
Hi there. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to affirm you into our hearing here. If you'll give me one moment.
Sure thing.
Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Andrew Yankiewski.
You affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do so affirm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ducharme. The street address of 218 Marion Street. Can you please commence your evidence?
Certainly, we have file number 24-328. Roll number 060-750-82000. We have an address 218 Marion Street. For the roll year 2025, with a reference date April 1st, 2023. We have an assessed value of 427,060 T. We have two buildings, two premises. One building is 1 story, one building is 2 stories. Actual year built 1913 and 2015 for an addition. We have an effective year built of 1974. I do have a recommendation to decrease the value from 427,000 to 349,000 by decreasing the rents. Would you like me to go through that?
Perhaps just, Mr. Yankuski, were you aware of the recommendation?
Yes, I was made aware of it last week.
And what is your position with respect to that?
Can I ask a question at this point? Because I was looking at the current assessed value, which would be the 2022 assessed value, and I couldn't find it in my records. So I just wondered how the offer compares to the current assessed value.
The current assessed value is 427,000 for 2025.
Well, for 2022.
Do you have that handy?
I don't have that handy.
Okay, then perhaps what we'll do is we'll proceed. If there's questions with respect to that, then we'll proceed. We have the recommendation of 349,000. Can you please outline the method you arrived at that number, please?
Certainly. So if we go to page 5 of my brief. So PID 3672 would be considered the main floor area. The area is 1,451 square feet. We had a rent at $17.89, and that's been changed to $15.66 per square foot. And then PID 30846, that'd be the second floor. We have an area of 547 square feet. And we changed the rent from $12.35 per square foot to $7.64 per square foot. The vacancy remains the same at 5%, expense is the same at 5%. shortfall the same at $7 per square foot. Net operating income changed from 29,446 to 24,091. We have the same cap rate, 6.9. And this changes the estimated value from 427,000 rounded to 349,000 rounded. Let's go back to, so.
No, you can continue on through the cap rates. I think I've got them math correct with respect that the comparables are gonna be less important now, I think.
On page 2 are the subject photos. Going back to page 2 is the top page is an overhead view facing the front of the subject at 218 Marion Street. The bottom photo is an overhead view facing the back and side of the subject building. You can see the 2-story addition that was done in 2015. On page 3 is a Google Street view facing the front of the subject, the original build. And the bottom is a Google Street view facing the back of the subject. You see sort of the addition. On page 4 are the rent comparables. The first 5 comparables: 166 Provencher, 175 Marion, 313 Kenny, 315 Kenny, and 316 Taché Avenue B are main floor rent comparables. The next 7 comparables were second floor rent comparables. These were comparables were included in the brief in support of our model. However, based on the applicant's evidence, we recategorized the second floor premise from C2 to C6, which is storage mezzanine. So these comparables really no longer apply and will not be discussed further. For the main floor comparables, comparable 166 Provencher Boulevard. This comparable was chosen as it's located in the same region 1, St. Vital, St. Boniface, and in the adjacent neighborhood as a subject. It has the same parcel use as the subject. It's a 2-story building, and the building has an effective age similar to the subject and has no parking available, similar to the subject. Comparable 2, 175 Marion. This comparable was chosen as it's located on the same street and same region as a subject. It's located in an adjacent neighborhood as a subject. And this comparable is the same parcel use, CMRST as a subject, and of similar effective age of the subject, and is similar to the subject in parking. This comparable has room for 3 parking spaces on the side street, Kenny. Comparables 3 and 4. 313 and 315 Kenny are in the same building as comparable 2, but they're fronting Kenny. So the same reasoning would be applied as to why these 2 were chosen. Comparable 5, 316 Taché B. This comparable was chosen as it's located in the same region as a subject, located in an adjacent neighborhood to the subject. The same parcel use, CMRST as a subject. Same effective age as the subject. It's a 2-story building, and this comparable also has limited parking for about 6 stalls. So to sum, the comparable rents average $16.30 per square foot. The comparable rent medians are $16 per square foot. The revised main floor rents are now $15.66 per square foot, which I feel is supported by the comparables, and which is discussed on the next page, but I've gone through it. If we skip to page 7 of my brief, the cap rates. The subject's being applied a 6.90% cap rate, which is just above the 80th percentile for the city of Winnipeg, and near the 80th percentile for other reports, which we feel is a fair rate for the subject property. Page 8, the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Page 9 is the subject 2022 income and expense report that they returned. Page 9, we see page 1 of the income and expense questionnaire. He's indicated, we see, as owner occupied. Page 10 is page 2 of the questionnaire. And page 3 is a tenant verification form. Again, we see that the form indicates it as being owner occupied. On page 12, I did include a copy of a permit plans for the addition in 2015 that I added here, based on the applicant's evidence and pictures of the second floor, that's been changed from a C2 to a C6 for basically just the storage and mezzanine for the second floor area. And that would conclude my evidence.
Thank you. Mr. Yankuski, have you any questions of the assessor?
The only question I have relates to the comparables. I don't know if that's an appropriate time to ask it, but just as to how the comparables were arrived at. If I can ask a specific question to that regard, I just wanted to see if that was proper at this point.
Yep, that's proper.
Yeah, I'm just curious because the main thrust of my building is that it's an old house that has been converted to a commercial property. So I guess I'm just curious as to why there are no other comparables that are kind of that nature of a building, that type of construction, because we have a lot of those on Marion Street.
Well, there may be a lot, but there was no evidence submitted to us that I could find in that regard of a residential building being converted to commercial in that area or that region and in that street. So I mean, I couldn't find them if they either didn't. A lot of these properties that are owner occupied, so we don't get the income information. So that might be why I couldn't find it.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Thank you. Ms. Wareham, any questions?
I don't, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
I just have one question and I think you've answered it, but if I look at the picture on page 3, it's got a deck on the back. And it looks like it could be a residence.
We confirm that from the owner, but I don't believe it's a residence. I believe it's just an attic and a mezzanine. But he could confirm that, not to my knowledge.
Because with the deck off, it looks like it's got patio furniture as a normal residential dwelling would have. Anyway, that was my only question. Thank you.
I was curious about that as well. I don't have any questions with respect to the property from now. Mr. Ducharme, Mr. Yankuski, your evidence, please.
Yes. Okay. So I'm want to just make sure everybody has my brief addendum in front of them, which would be the updated brief that I filed, which contains my rebuttal evidence, because I will be referring to it. There's a number of pictures of the property. I don't think they differ in any meaningful way from what was presented by the city. So I just wanted to draw your attention.
Stop you for a moment, Mr. Yankuski. We don't have your, the rebuttal evidence will be distributed. But if we could have your submission first of all, please, and then we'll deal with the rebuttal evidence.
Can I refer to things on my rebuttal evidence or not at this point? So this point, you just want me to just present my, so we'll wait for rebuttal. That'll be at a later part in the process, correct?
Please, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, at this point, then I would just describe the building. So 218 Marion is where I run my business out of. So it's entirely owner occupied, has been already noted. It's a recording studio. And essentially, the 1913 building was originally where I conducted business. And then I added in 2015 the addition that you see, which is the 2-story white building that's already been discussed. And essentially, that is a loft area. So where we host events, where we host meetings, where we sometimes take breaks with clients. So that's why it kind of has a residential type nature. I know there were a couple questions about that, including the deck, which we have the opportunity to use in the summer as well too. So being a recording studio, we have artistic things going on. And so there is an expectation amongst our clients, especially during longer sessions, and that we have places to host them, including occasionally having someone sleep in our spare room that we have as well, too. In terms of the building itself, since we're not down to the rebuttal evidence, my main contention at this point is that there's been no material change to the building since the time of the last assessment in 2022.
Thank you. Mr. Ducharme, any questions?
Yes, we see pages 3 through 10 of your brief. For the original 1913 build, would you agree it's been significantly renovated, including electrical, mechanical, and plumbing?
Sorry, I was muted. I mean, it's a bit difficult to separate the two buildings because they do share one HVAC system. So when we did the upgrade to the building, which was the 2015 edition, that included a new furnace, a new hot water heater. We needed to install an HRV at that time as well too to stay up to code. So those resources are shared between the two buildings. Electrical was not touched in the 1913 building at that time. So since I purchased the building in 2012, there have been no electrical upgrades to the 1913 building.
That'd be all my questions. Thank you.
Ms. Warhoon, any questions? For Mr. Jankowski?
Yes, I was just looking at the foundation of the building. When was all the foundation reinforcement done?
So that was done for the 2015 build because as you could note there is a cracked foundation in the building. So in order to facilitate that permit, we had to have some strategy to ensure that the existing building, the 1913 building, was buttressed against any potential harm caused by the drilling of the piles.
Okay, but no electrical was done.
No electrical was done to the 1913 building, correct.
Okay.
They did
That's
move
all.
the power service, or just so that you're aware, full
Okay.
disclosure, they did move the power service from one side of the building to the other because the new building would have obstructed the existing power service. So that the actual source of the service was moved to the other side of the building, which is the new building, the addition. But there were no material changes to the 1913 building other than the power service being moved just to facilitate the placement of the new building or the addition.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre, questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. Now, you had submitted some rebuttal evidence as well, Mr. Jankowski?
Yes, I did.
Do we have that now?
Yeah, I'm just going to find my page where I have my summary. Just bear with me for a couple seconds while I do that.
Okay, we're just getting a copy for the assessor. We don't have it yet.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think the main thing I wanted to point out just originally is already been addressed, which is that we have a cracked foundation in the 1913 building, so that does impact its value, although we have reinforced it, at least insofar as to facilitate the 2015 edition. So I just wanted to point that out because that does impact the value of the existing 2013 building. And so I just wanted to raise that. In terms of my rebuttal evidence here, bear with me.
If I can just stop you for a second, because we don't have a copy of it as yet. We're printing out a copy for Mr. Ducharme. Just waiting for it to reload. No, I don't have that. One at the top. 24/7/52.
I'll just confirm,
Yeah.
final number we're on, you have it? Okay.
There we go. Yeah, I have it now. for Mr. Bouchon to confirm. I might have about that since page number 6. Thanks, Mr. Yankuski. If you can proceed with your rebuttal evidence, please.
Okay. One more question. Can I now at this point refer to specific items like photos in my rebuttal evidence and
Yes.
brief? Okay,
Yes.
good. So yeah, so I'll just briefly refer to, just going to find them because I scrolled down. Bear with me for a couple seconds here. Like I said, it's already been addressed, but I just wanted to refer to page 33, which shows a picture of the horizontal crack in the foundation. Or sorry, page 14, my mistake. It's 14 of 33. Page 14, similarly, page 15, another view of another part of that crack. Page 16, page 17, just so that that's on the record. Just a number of views detailing that insofar as it impacts the assessed value of a portion of my building. And now I'll just proceed down to my notes. So I know that there are some of the comparables that have been removed as a result of what we've heard today. So I apologize. I drafted this rebuttal at prior to knowing that, but I think most of it is still relevant. So I'll just briefly go through it. My assertion is that the comparables listed in the city's brief fundamentally differ from my property in terms of building materials, design, and purpose, and thus are not entirely meaningfully comparable to my property. And I'll detail that. So a lot of the buildings listed in the assessor's brief feature steel beam or brick construction, whereas my building is a 1913 house, which was much later converted to a commercial building with the 2015 addition. And note that the 2015 addition is constructed in the manner of a home: wood framing, drywall, hardy board siding, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to draw attention to that. I believe it has already been noted in our preliminary discussions or in some of the preliminary discussions that have gone on. But I wanted to note that it is, and you now understand the purpose of it. It is more in the nature of kind of a home style building because it's used to host people in sort of that respect. Even though it is, of course, a fully commercial building, but that's a deliberate thing, the way it's been constructed and the choice of construction materials. One thing that I wanted to note as well, too, is that I've got a 1913 building and then a 2015 building, and I'm not sure how the city arrives at its effective dates. I don't know what formula they use, but I just use an averaging formula. When I add 2015 plus 1913 and divide by 2, I get 1964. And so my assertion is that a more fair date effectively for my building would be 1964. I can't speak to how the city assessor and what their process is. But what was obvious to me is that when you have two dates, you'd average them to get a resulting effective date. And so when I do that, it's 10 years older than what the city is doing. So I'm going to just assert that that's a reasonable method and that 1964 would be a more appropriate effective date for my two buildings combined into one. Now, one of the things I noted when I look at the assessor's brief is that we have buildings that are expressly designed for rental purposes, i.e. they feature multiple self-contained units with separate entrances, exits, and parking. And I don't know the buildings intimately, but I'd be willing to bet on a lot of those units, there's separate HVAC systems that supply them that are adjustable. And I'm using that to differentiate them from my building. My building, conversely, is a contiguous whole, and there's only one bathroom in the building, which is located in the 1913 building. As noted earlier, I have a single HVAC system, hot water heater, and HRV, which supplies both buildings. As such, my building is not readily demisable into separate leasable spaces without time-consuming, expensive redesign and construction costs. So I just wanted to note that as a differentiating factor, because it appears that all of the other comparables are expressly buildings that are designed to be leased out or to create rental revenue, whereas my building does not have that type of a design. My building also has a total of 3 parking spaces, 2 of which are currently occupied by my vehicles. In terms of the purpose of my building, it was originally a house, as we've heard, that was much later converted into a commercial building, and it is entirely owner-occupied. The upgrades and improvements that I have made over the years since I purchased it in 2012 are specific to the operation of my business, which is a recording studio and audio post-production facility. Whereas comparable buildings listed in the brief are clearly optimized for rental revenues, my building has been optimized for the specific purpose of business activities, and my business activities do not relate to real estate or rental revenue. My final note on comparables here, which I do have some photos I can refer to, is that I included images of 5 commercial buildings within 2 blocks of my building on Marion, which I think are more realistically comparable to my building in that they are former residential houses that have been converted to commercial buildings. And I question why the city has not included any of these buildings or others of this type in its comparables, especially given that they are so close to my building. With regard to the remainder of my rebuttal evidence, I know some of the comparables have been excluded. So I've got them listed here, but I didn't memorize which ones were excluded. So perhaps could you stop me if I'm speaking to something that has already been excluded? Is that something that we can do?
Sure. Mr. Assessor can, if you start delving into a property that has been excluded, then Mr. Duca, can you advise us, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, just to not waste anybody's time here. So the first one that I have is 166 Provencher. I wanted to briefly speak to it. Is that one that's still in consideration?
Yes, that was included.
Okay. So yeah, so what I did here, and please note that I included a header, not with regard, you can ignore the assessed value because I understand that evidence, that's not valid evidence, but I included the header from the city's property website just for the purpose of making sure that I had the correct property, because what I did is I took a Google image of the property and included it in my evidence. Here we can see at 166 Provencher, we have a brick building constructed in 1978, which I can contend is much more recent than my building. It is larger than my building in that it is 2 full stories. And I think we've heard already that my 2-story building is fundamentally 2 stories for the acoustic properties of that building. So it's basically a high ceiling and open loft area with, I guess, what you could call a mezzanine, or more appropriately, I guess, a loft space up top, which I understand has now been characterized as storage, which I think is a fair assessment. So here we have a full 2-story building, more firmly constructed out of brick materials, and it is clearly a multi-unit building. Looking at the photo that I've included, which is on page 27, you can see that there are separate entrances and exits for separate units. Moving on to 173 Marion, I just wanted to check first to make sure this one's still in consideration.
175 Marion? Is that what?
Well, 173 Marion is the building that houses
Or 173?
175, 313, and 315, which are
Yes.
all units. So really the building is 173 Marion, correct? Because that's the address that shows up when you search those
Yeah,
properties.
this is the one, yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to confirm that because it is a bit misleading when I look at the brief. In fact, when you refer to 175 Marion, 313 Kenny, and 315 Kenny, they're actually all units in a single building, which I want to point out. I've included 2 views. The first view is on page 28 of my brief. And in that view, you can see that this is clearly a multi-unit building, and I would contend that it was constructed specifically for the purpose of demising into separate units which are rentable. We can see if we look at page 29 of my brief, which is the Kenny side, the Kenny view, you can see that each of these units, once again, has separate signage, separate entrances and exits, clearly self-contained separate units, which I would suggest fundamentally differ from the design and construction of my building. Also, we can see here, this is a brick building constructed in 1979. It's more recently built, has more modern construction materials, and it's significantly larger than my building as a whole. And of course, as I've already indicated, it's a multi-unit building explicitly built for the purposes of leasing units, whereas my building is entirely purposed to the operation of my business. Moving on to 123 Marion, I just want to check in with the assessor. Is this one still on the table?
No, that's the second floor.
Okay, so we'll skip 123 Marion. 130 Marion, is this one still in consideration?
No, that's second floor.
Okay, good stuff. So really then, all I'm left with, if I can just draw your attention to the final page of my brief and rebuttal evidence, which is page 33. I didn't bother looking these properties up on the city's website, but I wanted to just briefly show that 224 and 229 Marion, which are almost exactly across the street from me. My suggestion is that these are the types of buildings which would be more directly comparable to my building. Similarly, a little further down the street, about 2 blocks down from me, are 278, 282, and 284 Marion, which is the lower picture on page 33. Once again, you can see these are all commercial buildings that were originally houses. So my suggestion here is I'm just raising the question. It seems curious to me that there's not even a single one of these types of buildings has been included as comparable when clearly just a 5-minute Google search on the same street as me, a couple blocks down, yields numerous commercial buildings of this type. That concludes my rebuttal evidence.
Mr. Ducharme, questions?
Well, no, I don't have questions, but I guess I'll have a summary in related to what he just said, so maybe I'll wait for summation there.
Okay, that'd be fine. Yes, Mr. McIntyre.
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Warren. Questions?
None, thank you.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Yankuski. The new rent that has been attributed to your property of $15.66 on the main floor and $7.64 on the second floor. What rent would you think is appropriate, or would you say is appropriate with respect to those properties? And follow-up question, the pictures at 224, 229 Marion and the other comparable houses, do you know what those spaces rent for?
I'll answer your second question first. I do not know what those spaces rent for.
Okay.
I don't have evidence to submit in that regard. I merely included them, as I indicated earlier, just to raise that question, because it's something that I noticed. So that concludes the answer to that question. And with regard to rental values, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think in those terms because I'm not the type of landlord that leases anything out, nor have I ever in the past. So my contention here is that I would like to see the assessment of my building remain at the 2022 assessed value, which I know we don't have in evidence today, but I know that it can be discovered by the assessor. But that's essentially the thrust of my argument here today, that because there's been no material change to the building and for other reasons that I've listed, that it should remain at the 2022 assessed value. Is that a reasonable answer to your question?
It's an answer to my question. Thank you.
Okay, good.
I don't have anything more with respect to that. Mr. Ducharme, you mentioned summary.
Yeah, just in regards to the comparables, I mentioned to the panel and to the applicant why I had chosen them. I made an adjustment on the rents based on those comparables that I think is fair and reasonable. And in regards to his suggested comparables, they did not show in our system that I'm aware of. I mean, I can look up in our system to find them, but if I'd known about this beforehand, I could have talked to him, let him know why they weren't chosen. So.
Thank you. Mr. Yankuski, any summary to provide us?
So just a final summary of my position. Is that what you're seeking at this time?
Sure, and you don't have to. If you choose to, that's fine. If you choose not to, that's fine too. That's all up to you.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident that I presented my case. So unless the board has any other questions for me, or there's anything else procedurally, I think I'm fine at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Then, having heard all of the evidence on that, we'll conclude this matter, and you will be instructed, or you will be advised by registered letter shortly of our decision. Thank you for your submission.
And thank you so much for your time today.
And there remains one matter, that's 467 Sergeant. Can we go in camera, please, briefly to determine what we're going to do on this? We'll call the meeting back to order. We will hear the evidence with respect to the last matter on the docket, the 467 Sergeant Avenue. Mr. Ducharme, if you can lead us through the report, please.
File number 24-176, roll number 130-521-13000. The address 467 Sergeant Avenue, for the roll year 2025 with a reference date April 1st, 2023. We have an assessed value 466,060 T. For the property, it's a parcel use of CMRST. There are 2 buildings, 2 premises, 1 story. Actual years built 1933 for 1 building, 2010 for the other. And effective years built 1933 and 2010. We have a land area 4,949 square feet and a leasable area of 3,300 square feet. I did have a recommendation. My recommendation was to decrease the assessed value from 466 to 443 by decreasing the rent on one of the premises. Which I can go through at this time if you want.
Please.
On page 5, the subject property market income report. Premise ID 22119. This is the main building, C2, with a leasable area of 27,000 square feet. Reduced the rent from 1422 to 1350. Giving a potential rent from 38,369 to 36,450. Vacancy is the same, expenses the same, shortfall the same, we kept the same cap rate. So the net operating income changed from 35,441 to 33,650. And this changes the estimated value from 466 to 443. That was based on my comparable evidence and we're using. From the start of the week.
No, I think that's sufficient for us. Mr. McIntyre, have you any questions?
No, I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Wareham, do you have any questions?
None, thank you.
And I have no questions. In summary, required?
No, sorry.
Thank you. Then that concludes this matter and that finishes the matters on the docket for today. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone.
Thank you as well. Thank you.